1987 in Zurich, and studied fine arts at the University of Arts in Bremen and theory at the Zurich University of the Arts. He's director of Cabaret Voltaire and a curator. The Cabaret was the birthplace of Dada in 1916. This year is the 100th anniversary of Dada, and thanks to Notz, this pilgrimage site has a shepherd, or as one newspaper put it, quote, the guardian of this temple of Dada. Fantastic. Describing this year, Notz writes, quote, if you come to, I think I just did something to you. Okay. I guess if you come to Cabaret Voltaire, it looks like a bar where people get drunk in the nights. Then it is also an event space with a lot of different events and happenings. So we have a very mixed audience from all parts of the city and the world. During the centennial, Cabaret Voltaire is the eye of the storm. Everyone who wants to have the true Dada 100 experience goes through here, end quote. Since tomorrow is election day, I'm guessing many of us relate to the sensation of being in the eye of the storm, a different but related storm. Dadaism matters today because we understand it as a collective scry against the established order that led to World War I, the Great War, the last war of many, many wars ago. But Dadaism is also important because that scry was, in actuality, not a collective scream at all. It was not screamed in unison, and for some, wasn't screamed at all. But it offered terms of critique of the norm, as well as affirmations of experiences normally pushed to the periphery of establishment life. It is the many-faceted aspect of Dada that I think allows for its constant reinvention, but as a topic for historians and a source of inspiration for artists. If the election goes to the wrong side tomorrow, I suspect that many of us will be reaching out to Notz in his official capacity as the ambassador of the kingdom of Helgoland Vargaland. Where is that, you might wonder? Somewhere in Eastern Europe or on an island in the Baltic Sea where artists can live in critical and free creativity? Get out your passport. The kingdoms of Helgoland and Vargaland, CREV, were proclaimed in 1992 and consist of all border territories, graphical, geographical, mental, and digital. Thank you. I'm serious about that passport.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for this nice introduction and also in a way for this revanche opportunity to, after having you in Cabaret Voltaire 5 or 6 years ago, to be here today. Thank you also, Beate, for inviting me here, and thanks to Lorelei, who didn't find a babysitter tonight, so she can't be here. Yeah, basically Hannah already said everything, so it's okay. Yeah, I would like to try and, with this big title, I talk because we're in the States, we have to be a little bit bigger than in Switzerland, to talk about Cabaret Voltaire as a Gesamtkunstwerk, in that sense, that I talk a little bit about the history, about what we're doing, and about what it could be, because it's always this potential that it has that we will never fulfill. So this is the place with the address, Spiegelgasse 1. That's where the Dadaists met 100 years ago. And since a couple of months, we've been saying that Cabaret Voltaire is maybe not a building or a place, but much more a monument. And this goes back to Jacques Rancière, who had this lecture in 2003 in Brazil with the title, Does Art Need to be Resistant? And over there he talks about the two sides or resistances of a monument, which are basically a passive resistance and an active resistance. So the passive one is one of memorizing of the revolution that happened, and the active in that sense is maybe something like a call to the future that a monument still has, and especially Cabaret Voltaire has it in a certain sense, because In 2002, the whole building, it belongs to a Swiss insurance company, Swiss Life, was squatted by artists. Some know them actually. And thanks to the squatting, the people in Zurich and in Switzerland realized that we have this cultural heritage in Zurich. And they tried to avoid that there would be a pharmacy inside, downstairs over here, and that they would have luxury flats upstairs because an insurance company needs to make money with buildings. And they managed in a way, they managed that now we can use the down two spaces here, and upstairs we have luxury flats. We're renting half of a flat where you pay 5,550 francs a month, which is about $5,550. And I think squatting or this kind of, let's say, radical political artists is, of course, a kind of active resistance. They also call themselves neo-Dadaists. Other active resistance artists we know, like Vojna, the Russian art group, or Pussy Riot, which is more famous. With Vojna we collaborated a little bit. I did something quite illegal last year, and I brought them to Switzerland over the border without passports and tried to help them, but they're not really people one can help. Then we also have this notion or this idea of creative activists. Over there, of course, the Yes Men or Reverend Billy, who were also in Zurich a couple of years ago. And to loosen this situation up a little bit, I would like to show you a video which we did together with the Yes Men and Reverend Billy.
We're here in Zurich, home of the Dada movement. We're dressed as mops. We're going to clean a bank.
And we're cleaning the whole facade, not only the windows, but the whole...
Yeah, not only everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
All right.
Cleaning the books, cleaning
Cleaning up the books, that's really important.
All right.
Okay, where are we going though? It's very hard to see through this.
UBS, you see it?
Oh,
UBS. Big building, very nice.
okay.
This bank is still
Today the cleaning and tomorrow the exorcism.
Come back to life! When the sun comes out and everything's warm, the revolution will rise up! Amen! Revolution! Revolution!
So that was on the occasion of a conference we organized And Reverend Billy just arrived directly from New York, and he had a terrible jet lag, so he said, I have to do something. And we had this so-called McGilly suits, sniper suits, because this is an art project from some Zurich artists, and so we went to clean the bank. So we were very fresh afterwards, and the bank was clean. And next day, Reverend Billy wanted to do exorcism, and then they already shut down the bank with the golden gate, so one couldn't enter anymore. Then the passive resistance is what, of course, we remember, the memory of the revolution. And if you look at Dada, we don't really have a lot of documentation. We basically have Hugo Ball's book, The Flight Out of Time. We have some notes by Tristan Tzara. Later on, also Hans Arp wrote some things, but there's no film document or photo. There's only one photo maybe that was taken over there. But we know that it's basically these 7 protagonists from all across Europe. And one could say that they were refugees, especially Hans Arp, who you see here on the right side here, who came from Elsass, which is between Germany and France. We have also Richard Hülsenbeck and Hugo Ball and Emmy Hennings, who were German, and Zara and Janko, 2 Romanian, one could say, boys who came from Romania because they wanted to study in Zurich. And I tried to define them here. The characters with Star Trek. So, for example, Hugo Ball was a very sober thinker. That's why he's Spock and Data and, in a way, also Picard, the cultivated captain of Next Generation. Or you would have Richard Hülsenbeck, who came to Zurich a week later and started playing the drums. He said he wants to enforce the rhythm by playing the drums. So he was a very impulsive person. So maybe he's something like a Klingon, Worf, or like James D. Kirk. And later on, here in the States, he then became psychiatrist. So he's also a little bit something of Dax from Deep Space Nine. Or Tristan Tzara, he was a very, well, first of all, he was a small guy, so he needed a lot of attention, and he was kind of greedy for fame, so one could say he's a little bit like a Ferengi, the Quark, who always tries to get gold or platinum. He was just a boy, like Wesley, the son of Beverly, or what was it, Q, who's like an omnipotent figure in Star Trek Next Generation. So the only image which we have of Cobra Volta is this one. It's a painting by Marcel Janko, which he did in 1916, but it also disappeared in 1925 somewhere. It was the last place where it was seen in Romania. We have this other, maybe already kind of iconic image of Hugo Ball, where he's reciting his sound poems, Gajibere Bimba and Caravane and the Totenklage, in his cubistic costume. And there's a speculation if this was in Cabo Revolte, but it's most probably just in a photo studio because nobody had a camera to take a picture of him performing over there. And then there's this other, which I think iconic image of Emmy Hennings or Sophie Teuber dancing in a cubistic costume, and I like to compare them also a little bit as one could say in a masculine and female principle that Emmy Hennings or Sophie Teuber, we don't really know who it is, but we suspect that it's one of the two, is much more dynamic dancing over there, whereas Hugo Ball is a kind of, how do you call it, pillar saint, Säulenheiliger, just standing over there and reciting. We have one document from the time of Cabo Revolte. This is the magazine Cabo Revolte, which was published in May 1916, where they have a small text at the beginning about their ideas and about what they're doing with Cabo Revolte. And basically it was not just with contributions by Dadaists of Cabo Revolte, but also with friends all over Europe. So I like to say that Dada is, in that sense, maybe a new epoch, started in 1916, and to describe how important it was, one can see what this figure 1503 means. That's when Pope Julius II put the Apollo statue in the Garden Belvedere in the Vatican. And there's an artist, Goran Djordjevic, from Kosovo, Serbian Kosovo artist, who says that this was the first modern art exhibition, because he then took a religious statue out of a religious context and basically put it into a more or less neutral space, not into the church, but into the garden. And that's where you started looking at it, where does it come from? Is it a pagan boy, or is it a god? Is it a Roman or Greek? So it's a lot of ideas about history and aesthetics. One could say were triggered with this act by Pope Julius. And also Michelangelo, who at that time was painting the Sixtine Chapel, saw it, and he took a lot of variations from this, or from the torso, or from Laocoon statues to paint the Sixtine Chapel. So a little bit oversized, one could say that in a way he triggered a whole series of epochs, which one can summarize as Enlightenment, or the era of science, with Renaissance, Romanticism, Modernism, Nationalism, Industrialization, and Capitalism. And then, of course, we have another figure in 1917, Marcel Duchamp, who also placed an object into a context where it doesn't really belong, the fountain. And as you, I guess, all know, the idea of Marcel Duchamp was to put this fountain into the first independent art exhibition in New York. And they handed it in to the committee, but they refused it. And then Duchamp, together with his other Dada friends, said that if you don't let this fountain to be part of the exhibition, they will step out of the committee. So the scandal was actually produced by the people leaving the committee. And Duchamp, with his friend Stieglitz, who was a photographer and one of the first photography art exhibition gallerists, he then made a picture of it and published it immediately in a magazine, Blind Man, a couple of weeks later. So that's actually where the scandal happened, because it was never shown. Nobody except the committee saw it. But then they immediately wrote about it. They said there was this Buddha of the bathroom and the Armut scandal that happened in 1917. So in a way, I would like to say that we started a new epoch. It was in the time of the second industrialization. It's also maybe today one would say, if you look at this idea of new literacy or new digital literacy, you have a lot of principles that you find in Dada, like remixing or working in networks, hyperlinks, etc. So maybe it's now 100 years later that we found the proper media to it. We made an exhibition which we call the Genesis of Dada. And I think the genesis of Dada is also in a way a good explanation of what Dada is, or how one can understand it. It's basically three places. You can see it on the maps which I gave you. There was the first one, Cabaret Voltaire, which was in the red light district of Zurich. And then the second place was on the other side of the river in Galerie Dada, which was a year later. And over there they were already very, very bourgeois, try to organize an exhibition, try to sell art to other bourgeoisie. And in between, also geographically, but also in time, we have the Zunfthaus zur Waag, which is a guild house to the balance. And in the guild house to the balance, Hugo Ball reads his first Dada manifesto, and over there are 4 sentences which I think are, in a way, a good definition of what Dada is. The first one is, how do you achieve eternal bliss? By saying Dada. How do you become famous? By saying Dada. With noble gesture and delicate propriety, until craziness, until unconsciousness. So there's some contradictions in these ideas, but one could place them in the two places. So the idea of bliss, achieving bliss, was maybe something that they practiced much more in Cabaret Voltaire. There's also where you have Hugo Ball reading his sound poems, and then he started to realize that the people are not listening to him anymore, and he started chanting like a priest. So it's like, and then everybody got very silent and started listening. And he had a kind of, one could say, illumination, where he was remembered of himself as a ministrant boy in the Catholic Church in the south of Germany, and soon after then started studying Christian mysticism and wrote a book also on the Byzantine Christianity. It's also, of course, because they were performing every day except Fridays, because Fridays the bar was too well visited, that they also got into a kind of state of ecstasy by constantly performing. Then how do you become famous? By saying Dada is much more what happened in Galerie Dada. It's where they started talking about Dada as a movement, Le Mouvement Dada. It's where they started publishing their first Dada magazines, Dada 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, till it ended with number 7 in Paris. It's, of course, also the place where they tried to sell art, where they kind of established these experiments from Cabaret Voltaire in programs that happened in Galerie Dada. And then with noble gesture and delicate propriety is also something that you need more in Bahnhofstrasse, which is maybe one of the most expensive shopping streets in the world today. It's also where we cleaned the banks. And until craziness, until consciousness is, of course, closer connected to Cabaret Voltaire. But I like this place, the Zunft das zur Waag, because it gives a nice symbol, the balance. So it's not about bliss or fame, it's about having bliss and fame and trying to keep it in a balance. Or there's this beautiful English word that I learned in high school when I was a teenager. It's like pivot. And I was thinking, when would I ever use pivot? But now I know, I'm using it constantly. So I learned that pivot is the needle on which the needle of a compass is balancing. So it's basically the in-between place. It's actually a non-place. It's a pivot. And there are maybe 12 topics which I would like to talk a little bit about to define Dada. So mysticism is, as I noted before, connected to very much to Hugo Ball, and he also wrote this book, The Byzantine Christianity, which should be over here. This is basically the cover image. And over there he writes about 3 saints or hagiographs. That's John Climax, Dionysius Areopagita, or Dionysius the Areopagite, and Simeon the Stylites. So one is a monk, one is a bishop, the other one is a saint. And in the same time, he also writes a text which was called Der Künstler und die Zeitkrankheit, the artist and the sickness of the time. And over there he says that using basically Dionysius, who one could say is the inventor of the hierarchy of angels and demons and saints, etc., he says that there's also a kind of hierarchy over here from a citizen to an artist and to a saint. And he says that soma, the body, is connected to the citizen, or it's like the field or the mediation area of the citizen, whereas the artist is in psyche, and pneuma, which is the spirit, would be the field of the saint. And when he wrote the book in 1923, he said, "When I came across the word Dada, I was called upon by Dionysius, D-A-D-A, so Dionysius Areopagita." And with some artists from Slovenia, we worked on this by also showing Byzantine icons in Cabaret Voltaire to give this idea that Dada is not a representation of something, but much more like a tool, like an icon to the pneumatic era. Psyche as a topic is on one side a very practical thing for the Dadaists. They were hanging out a lot with different psychologists and psychiatrists like especially Dr. Hans Huber, who was the director of Sanatorium Kilchberg, you can see it down over here, or also Charlot and Eva Stressler, Eppelbaumer, Fritz Bruckbacher, who then also wrote certificates for them that the Dadaists are mentally ill. So for example, Tristan Tzara was called by the Romanian embassy to prove that he can't go to military service, and he then started reading Dada poems and brabbled around, and that's with the certificate from Fritz Bruckbacher, he could then avoid being, how do you call it, withdrawn for military service. He had a so-called dementia praecox, which is like an early stage of craziness, Frühjugendirrsinn, youth craziness. Or another sickness which was used a lot by the Dadaists, for example by Francis Picabia, the reason why he came to Switzerland is neurasthenia, which is burnout, one would say today. So it's like a nervous breakdown, which was the reason why Picabia came to Switzerland, to the spa of the world, basically to recover. And then there was also the psychological club, where is it here, who also, C.G. Jung's psychological club, who started to study what the Dadaists were doing in their soirees. So there's also, in a way, this strange relationship between being friends, but also maybe being patients or just guests of the psychiatrists, and so on. And over here I tried to summarize, it's a very bold attempt, to summarize C.G. Jung's ideas about psychology. And I like that the idea or the message should be that it's not just about intellect, but about sensuality, intuition, and affect. So maybe the Dadaists try to get more into these fields. Philosophy was a big topic. They didn't just recite sound poems or did crazy dances, but they also just read philosophers or a lot of mystics also when they in evenings where they would talk about old and new art. The old art was always medieval art or mystics from medieval times. They were not very good friends with Immanuel Kant because, as Hugo Ball says, Kant is the arch enemy because he had delivered or the whole human being to reason and rationality. So this is basically a list of what was read in Cabaret Voltaire and what inspired the Dadaists to do what they did. Then literature, of course, was a big topic. They also read contemporary writers, like here, for example, Tommaso Marinetti or Apollinaire or Else Lasker Schüler and others in Cabaret Voltaire. But they also read older, like the generations before, Oscar Wilde, Arthur Rimbaud, Lautréamont, Baudelaire. And in a way, one could say the Dadaists tried to bring together these two ideas of these writers, dandies and bohemians, to be both at the same time. And of course, some of them were also writers and poets. Art is the basic idea of this diagram is to say that they try to break with all isms. So you have all this suprematism, constructivism, vorticism, Rayonism, etc. And they were all, these are all isms that were around in 1916. But then Dada came and we said, it's not an ism, you're not allowed to call it Dadaism, you're just allowed to say Dada. And one could say the innovations that they did was to, come up with collage using relief in art. That was, for example, Hans Apo, Sophie Teuber Apo, also Kurt Schwitter's, the idea of abstracts using embroidery, maybe also in Hannah Höch one can see it a little bit, or of course Sophie Teuber Arp. But then also in New York, for example, the Dada Baroness who brought herself, the I, das Ich, into art and said, I am art. Or with Picabia, we have this machine drawings, and with Marcel Duchamp, of course, the idea of the ready-made. So I like to say that in a way they took all of these things and kind of slammed it on the existing art at that time. Then language was a big topic, maybe one of the key topics, because they basically tried to destroy language. They said, as Hugo Ball said in his first Dada Manifesto, that they want to clean language, which is as dirty as, how they say, coins that have been used by bankers too many times. So what they did, in a way, one could say they used different social systems like philosophy, religion, science, education, etc., and took, on the one side, the way they write texts, on the other side, the sounds they make, and used it for their own reasons. So, for example, the manifest is, of course, something that comes out of politics. We're hearing a lot of manifestations these days, confusing manifestations. Or the blog, which is, they placed some media, how do you call it, media blogs, like hoaxes, saying that, what was it, a duel that happened in Zurich, but which never happened, tried to trick the newspapers. They used nice economy slogans, like advertisement slogans, like Dada is the best dairy milk in the soap. So in a way, it's kind of hijacking this different, one could say, sounds and texts from these different social systems and using it for themselves. The soirée, that is maybe the main place where everything happened. It's a soirée is an evening. It's like an evening event. And one could say, with the idea of Jacques Derrida, that where he talks about the impossible possibility of an event happening, that what they try to do is to create an event, like every evening being in Cabaret Voltaire at a certain time with a certain amount of people, with a lot of different influences like alcohol, drugs, smoke, songs, sausages, the audience, etc., to kind of create this moment where, as Jacques Derrida would say, the event comes out of the field of the impossible into the possible. And here you can see that it's basically a diagram of a time, so it's always about in the evening. The soirée has to happen in the evening. It's kind of the energy that the event has, and then also the place. So it's like here you have Cabaret Voltaire in Niederdorf, in Zurich, etc. So it's place, space, and time and energy. Africa was a big topic. It's basically they used the word Negro art or Negro poems, etc. And Negro, in that sense, stood for a lot of things. It wasn't just African art. It was also what they would call the wild or primitive art. It was art from Oceania. It was also local folk art from Switzerland or from Romania, or another politically incorrect word, art, what the Indians were doing. So they had this fascination for this primitive art or African art and tried to use it, like they would play the drums or used, as Hugo Ball would say, the voodoo sculpture is a lot more complex than a crucifix. In some poems you hear that Zanzibar suddenly appears. Zanzibar is a kind of place of longing, and of course the masks that they used in Cabaret Voltaire and later on also in Galerie Dada. The mask as a topic is interesting because it was Marcel Janko basically who came with this idea of a mask. Here you see one of his masks. And they put it on, and they said that immediately by using a mask they started moving differently and expressing different figures. Or as Hugo Ball said, they could, with the mask, they could express the horror of this time. And finally, they had something to fight the paralyzing background of things. So in a way, the mask gave them freedom to move differently, to act differently. And again, in this text, which I quoted before, The Artist and the Sickness of the Time, Hugo Ball also makes this difference between personari and personare. So it's active and passive. Persona, which means, one could say, a role that somebody has, is what happens in personare. So it's actually a role that you put on, a mask that you put on. But he was much more interested in the idea of personari. So he would say that it's like Hercules who put on the lion's costume, that it's basically his spiritual animal that creates the masks. Or as Lady Gaga would say, discover your inner freak and let him out. You know? So it's more about this kind of putting on the mask that you already have inside. Dance was very important in Gallery Dada. It's, I think, the most interesting part about dance in the context of Dada is this connection with the Laban dance school. Rudolf von Laban was, one could say, very simply the inventor of contemporary dance. He had a school in Zurich, but then of course also on Monte Verita in the south of Switzerland. And a lot of his dances, you can see them all here in triangles, were on stage in Galerie Dada. Some of them, like Sophie Teuber-Arp, was also a pupil of Laban, but at the same time also a Dadaist. And Emmy Hennings then also joined on the stage. So you have on the stage the Laban dancers and the Dada women, and basically backstage you would have Tristan Tzara trying to make sounds like thunder, or Hugo Ball who read a sound poem, so they had to try to dance to a sound poem like Seepferdchen und Flugfische, that's flying fish and Seepferdchen. Seahorses, yeah. Or Hans Arp, who made the costumes at the backstage, the stage design. Marcel Janker for the costumes, Hülsenbeck still playing the drum. And in the audience you had Mary Wigman and Rudolf von Laban, who didn't really join the stage. So I think dance, in that sense, is for the Laban dancers, it was interesting because they had to be even more experimental, to try and dance to a sound of a gong, or to try and dance to a sound poem, which is quite abstract. Revolt is a topic, or maybe more a field from which they nourished Dada to maybe have a certain revolutionary approach. So there were very direct contacts in Zurich with anarchists, communists, socialists, pacifists. Lenin was our neighbor in Cabaret Voltaire, communist, socialist. He also joined the Socialist Party in Zurich. Leo Trotsky was also in Zurich shortly before Dada happened. And then there was this connection to Fritz Bruppacher, who was publishing a magazine which was called Der Revoluzer, the Revolutionary, which was an anarchist magazine where Hugo Ball and Emmy Hennings also contributed. And maybe to have the other side again, Monte Verita, over there you also had revolutionaries, but not so political or punk revolutionaries, but maybe more hippie revolutionaries like anthroposophes, theosophes, life reformers, vegetarians, and nudists. So, like the pacifists, also the nudists and vegetarians thought they could change society. And maybe the nudists were the most successful, the vegetarians were the most successful, because I think there are more vegetarians than communists nowadays, no? And the last topic is brand. Dada is a great brand, otherwise I wouldn't be here today, no? Otherwise not everybody would be celebrating Dada this year, 100 years of Dada. It's also a great brand because it's where everybody can say it. Even Julia will soon be saying, she's still saying mama, but soon she will say Dada, no? So yeah, maybe it's one of the first things one says. And it means a lot of different things in different languages. Over here you have all the different possibilities where the name comes from. So we had Lenin there. Maybe Lenin was in Cabaret Voltaire and shouting da, 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 because he liked it so much. We had Tristan Tzara and Marcel Janko saying Dada all the time, which is just yes, yes, in Romanian or also in Serbian. It means hobby horse in French. We had Emmy Hennings who said to Hugo Ball, let's go Dada, which means let's go and have a walk. Or in German it means Dada, there. So Richard Hülsenbeck was throwing out the last drunken students of Cabaret Voltaire, and Hugo Ball said, da, siehst du, wo das hinführt? There, you see where this leads to. And the first declaration of Dada happened in Cabaret Voltaire, and it was Richard Hülsenbeck who said, we found the word Dada. It means nothing. And we want to change the world with nothing. So I like this because basically it's saying we want to change the world just with a word or with a sound. And this is nothing. So it's not using machinery or money or whatever, we just have the word, nothing. And Hugo Ball then goes on that this word is also a gesture. He says it's a gladiator's gesture. And then we have Tristan Tzara. You remember that he was the Ferengi, the kind of marketing greedy guy, who then said there's the mouvement Dada. So he wanted to he used the brand, he published these newspapers over here, Dada 1 till 7 in Paris. He made business cards, small flyers, started doing letterheads and letter papers to promote Dada as a movement. Dada was also a brand that already existed. It was in 1906. There was a company which was called Bergman & Co. and they produced 3 products. One was shampoo, a cream, and a soap. And there's a haarstärkendes Kopfwasser, so it's a hair-strengthening head water, shampoo, which was called Dada. There was a Dada cream, and the soap was called Steckenpferdseife, so hobby horse soap, or savon Dada in French. So maybe they were just influenced by advertisements, and that's why they called it Dada. So all of this, one could say, was in a way the genesis of Dada, or the foundation of this idea Dada, which then spread globally all around the world. I mean, all around the Western world, one would have to say, up to the most famous places being Paris, New York, Berlin, Zurich, Köln with Max Ernst, Hanover with Kurt Schwitters, and even to Tyrol, that's in Austria, where they had a small Dada Tyrol movement. So here we have a map of all the places and also basically all 165 Dadaists, because to also establish the brand Dada, you needed a lot of members, and especially Tzara was very good in doing lists of who is a member of the Dada movement. So we combined all these lists and all programs and the people he forgot, like Hugo Ball, for example, and came to 165 and added some so-called super Dadas, like or Über Dada, like Charlie Chaplin, who was said that he would join the Dada movement in Paris, and they made a soirée Dada where they announced that Charlie Chaplin would have come, was supposed to come, so a lot of people came, but Charlie Chaplin didn't. So today, I think if you talk about Dada, it's quite often we talk about a cliché. It's like this idea of yes is no, all is nothing, or this soulèvement of Dada, that it's kind of loosening up things, it's absurd, it's grotesque. It's what they promoted here in Paris, Tristan Tzara, with Dada soulève tout. And I think if we talk about the soulèvement of Dada, I try to point it out a little bit with the idea of the pivot. Before, I like to talk about Kurt Schwitters, because he, like Hugo Ball at the beginning of Dada, Kurt Schwitters at the end of Dada had very good definitions of what Dada is or could be. So he said that one should start distinguishing between saying Dada and Dada. So Dada is very German, Saxon, it's very banal, it's like what the audience would shout with delightment in Holland. They would go like Dada, Dada, Dada. But, so he says that's not the real thing. He says Dada is the style of our time, which doesn't have any style. Then he says that if you don't have any stress in the word, you can say Dada. That's what the art critics would say, because they're totally indifferent to Dada, so they just go like Dada. No? And what the Dadaists wanted is Dada. So Dada is like, it's French, it's kind of how you'd say it in Berlin, it's kind of metropolitan, and it has élan and esprit, as Kurt Schwitters would say. So I think that maybe Dada, with this idea of the pivot or of the soulèvement, is attacking Dadas as a style of our time and trying to loosen up this kind of very provincial Dada world that we're living in, and to try to create chaos, to create space. And in this space, then again, with talking with Kurt Schwitters, we then can create out of chaos, we can create form, or out of non-art banalities, we then create art. And that's where Kurt Schwitters would step in with his one-man art movement, März, to then create the März Gesamtkunstwerk. Or to say it a little bit more simple or more vulgar, one could say that today's time is porn, and we need eros in the sense, and the nice German word Sehnsucht, longing and seduction, etc., to open up places of imagination to create Kunst. Hugo Ball also said that Dada, or the Gesamtkunstwerk, is not an artwork. It is not about creating an artwork. He actually talked here also about Wassily Kandinsky, who's an artist who's not producing artworks, but he's producing art. So basically the idea is that art is bigger than the artwork, or just the production of an artwork. And Hugo Ball would say it's life. And we took this very serious, because at the opening of Cabaret Voltaire in 2004, we made a competition where we said we will give your baby 10,000 Swiss francs if you name him Dada. So this is Dada. He was born on the 6th of February 2005. And as you can see, he's not typically Swiss. Also his name, Dada Kim Osarimen Isef Bigi, doesn't sound like Felix Müller or Meyer, because Dada's father is from Nigeria, and in Dada's father's dialect, Dada means becoming king, prince. So it's a very nice name that you can give your son. So Dada is now 11. Dada lives in Winterthur, outside of Zurich. Goes to primary school, is in the 5th class, and leads an ordinary life. Another idea which we can take out of Dada is this, the figure of the trickster. Here we have Walter Zerner, who wrote his first Dada manifesto, was called Die letzte Lockerung, which is the last loosening, and which he then later on also published as a Handbrevet für Hochstapler. So it's basically a manual for tricksters. And the trickster is a nice figure because, of course, you have this kind of dandy-esque idea of a trickster, or what the yes men are doing as tricksters, but it's also somebody who can change forms. In shamanic cultures, you would say a trickster is somebody who can become a fox or a raven or a snake, and so on. So I think to be able to get into different systems, social systems, or in different social contexts, and not being expelled from them, or maybe much more infiltrating them, is an important notion of Dada. Then, this is a very, how would you say, fragile topic, because I don't really know much about feminism. But yesterday, so this is very fresh, I learned from a scholar. Here we have a collage by Hannah Höch from 1919. In German it is Schnitt mit dem Küchenmesser Dada durch die letzte Weimarer Bierbauch-Epoche. So it's you're using the Dada kitchen knife to cut through the Weimar beer belly culture. And she explained that in this collage, here you have a chart of countries in Europe where women were allowed to vote or not. And in Switzerland they only were allowed to vote in 1972 or something, 76, very late. So here this was in the time where they voted about women voting, and you can see that in this collage there's a lot of female figures, but it's only the body, and which is quite often replaced with the male head or with no head. So Maria, this scholar, was saying that in a way they're bringing this male heads to dance. So basically they're giving the body to the brain or to the just intellectual, rational thinking. And in that sense, she said that the kitchen knife, so kitchen knife, typically women at the stove cooking, the kitchen knife is cutting the German masculine beer bellies. And I like that the kitchen knife is Dada. So in that sense, one could say that Dada is maybe a very feminine principle, because, and this is a very superficial research about what feminine could be, they say it's something that is everywhere, it's about equality, it's kind of rhythmic or dynamic, it's convergent, it's mediating, giving, life, being, and so on. So out of this kind of everywhere idea, or the wholeness, we would then finally come to the topic of the Gesamtkunstwerk. And this is based on an exhibition that Harald Seemann did in 1983, which was called Der Hang zum Gesamtkunstwerk, the tendency to the total artwork. And over there, he also showed Kurt Schwitter's Märzbau. He made a reconstruction of the Märzbau from 3 photos that existed. And in this idea of the Gesamtkunstwerk, we have Hugo Ball again, who says that it's not an artwork, but it's art. We researched in the Getty Research Institute Harald Seemann's archive. So he starts basically with the one-man theater with Hugo Ball, who was the second exhibition he made, this idea of the Museum of Obsession, which was basically his museum in his head, that he used as a kind of, one could maybe say, a Gesamtkunstwerk, or as a model to work. And one of the first exhibitions that came out of this museum, der Obsession, is the Junggesellenmaschine, the bachelor's machine, where he showed Marcel Duchamp's great glass and Jarry and also some Dadaists. And then finally the Hang zum Gesamtkunstwerk. So the Museum of Obsession, as Harald Seemann would say, the museum is basically the place of the visualization. And obsession you use as an energy entity that drives you to research things, to find out new topics, which you then can visualize in the museum. And in his Gesamtkunstwerk, Batson Brock wrote a nice text for the catalog, and over there he says the idea of Gesamtkunstwerk is to create an image of the whole, or to try and think the whole, or to express the whole. So in German you would say das Ganze zur Sprache bringen, to bring the whole to language. Or it's also to create a vision, an utopia. Here you see an artwork by Lia Pershowski, who's trying to create her knowledge museum in Romania, or the construction, the U is missing, of a system. And over there is always this danger of totalitarianism, because as soon as you start creating a Gesamtkunstwerk, you have this idea that everybody should be subject to it, or that there's only one truth, or that you actually want to have life itself, the masses, believing in your Gesamtkunstwerk. So I think it's important to note that the Gesamtkunstwerk is an utopia, is a vision, is just how do you say, and just trying to create the wholeness, but not realizing it. Here you see Adolf Hitler, the Superman. Who swallows gold and talks sheet. It doesn't really make sense in English. In German it would be schluckt Gold und spricht Blech. So he just talks garbage. He swallows a lot of gold and talks garbage. A collage by John Hartfield. And the third notion, that besides Gesamtkunstwerk, totalitarianism, would be the idea of Totalkunst. So that's maybe the only place where you can actually realize a Gesamtkunstwerk. That would be in the personification of the whole, like the Dada Baroness, for example, who personified Dada by saying, "I am art," and walking around New York in her crazy dresses, wearing a bird cage as a necklace, or how do you say, cans as a bra, and vegetables. So a little bit Lady Gaga, but 100 years ago. Or another example of Totalkunst, of somebody who constructed his own life reality, Lebensrealität, according to the whole, is of course Kurt Schwitters with his Märzbau. Over here you see he started working in his studio first, then in his apartment, then he started infiltrating his parents' apartment and his wife's cellar, etc. So basically his Gesamtkunstwerk was starting to spread in his in his life, in his world where he was living. And another example is Arthur Craven, boxer and poet, who also became a real experimenting subject of the Gesamtkunstwerk Dada, who was known or famous because he boxed in April 1916 against Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion of the world. And he always said that, Arthur Craven said that he's the the poet with the shortest hair in the world, because as a boxer you need short hair. You can't walk around like a poet with long, wavy hair. And for the Dadaists in New York, for Duchamp and Picabia, Arthur Craven again was this kind of subject that would personify, or would actually be the experiment of Dada, by being a boxer and being very aggressive, and sometimes having a boxer instinct, or being very performative all the time. In New York, for example, at the opening of the first independent artist exhibition, he was invited to give a talk about European and American art, but they say he came totally drunk and started pissing on the paintings and had to go to prison, and so on. He also made, in Paris, he had a magazine which he published, which was called Maintenant, so Now. And in this magazine he wrote about, again, the first independent artist exhibition in Paris. He made a critique about all the artists, but which was very insulting, like very vulgar. So for example, about Marie Laurencin, who was a painter and at that time Apollinaire's girlfriend, he said, "This is once again one of these artists where you have to lift the skirt and put a ... underneath. So she understands that art is not just posing in front of the mirror." Or about Chagall, he said that he's a shakal, a shakel. Chagall, yeah, that he can only see, when he looks at Chagall's painting, he can only see the brain, but he would like to see the heart and the guts and the balls in art. So if we try to apply this to Cabral Voltaire today, we have this problem that we have a big, huge myth, mythos, the resistance I was talking about, this idea of a Gesamtkunstwerk that's maybe in Cabaret Voltaire and in Dada, and basically we have to try and find the proper ritual to it. So the first thing we did is to declare Cabaret Voltaire to be not a building, not a monument, but to be a sculpture. And this is quite simple. You just need an artist who says it's a sculpture. We have a price. It's 19.5 million Swiss francs. We made a model so one can understand what the sculpture, it's a model of the sculpture, Cabaret Voltaire, so one can understand better what the sculpture is. And the nice thing is that when it becomes an artwork, we have a lot less problems. We don't have this local politicians can't interfere anymore because they're politicians, not artists. It's because when it's not a building anymore, you can't speculate with it in the realty business. So you can't put a shop inside or make luxury flats. And also in law, it has a different status because an artwork, you wouldn't buy an artwork and, for example, a Van Gogh, and then destroy it and make a carpet out of it. So it's in a way, by becoming an artwork, it protects, it stays the way it is. And we try to deal with it on different levels. So Ort, I like to use Ort and not place, because as Heidegger said, Ort is the spearhead. So it's the birthplace of Dada, it's a Geburtsort von Dada. It's an institution because of the history, but also because of the way we're trying to run it. Then we have a so-called Dada-logical department. That's basically the research and mediation of Dada. We have something that we call the Academy, which is not basically always about Dada, but also about contemporary social and historical science topics. And then on the top, Kunst, art. So this year, we made an extensive ritual. We said, because we found 165 Dadaists, that we have to celebrate 165 celebration days from the 5th of February till the 18th of July, every day an event. And we made an exhibition which was called Obsession Dada. So here you see the numbers, 481 international actors, almost 50,000 visitors, 350 articles, and it was basically 4 of us who did it. And because this wasn't enough to just do something in the evening, I basically got up every morning at 6:30 and presented one of the 165 Dadaists in a so-called officium. That's in the Catholic monasteries, you have this kind of rhythm of praying, which is called officium. So every morning, one different Dadaist was presented. First, something about his or her biography, then I would read something that he or she wrote or show an artwork. And sometimes we would also chant together, like a sound poem, or read what Hugo Ball wrote about that day 100 years ago. Also in the Dada-logical department is this exhibition, Genesis Dada, which was basically trying to show what was shown in Cabaret Voltaire in 1916 and also in Galerie Dada in 1917. So we tried to collect these works together again, and also some African sculptures, because Galerie Dada was first the gallery of Han Koray, who was a collector of African art. So the first Dada exhibition, which was really an exhibition, was a mix between African art and basically expressionist art, which you can see here also. There was also the Kiriko hanging in the exhibition in Galerie Dada. So as another step of reenactment, we went to Paradeplatz, the place where we cleaned the banks, the place where Galerie Dada was, and over there now there's a very posh gallery, which is called Galerie Moschinska. And together with them we made a Kurt Schwitters exhibition where Zaha Hadid made the interior design. And this was shortly before she died. She made all the sketches and plans, and then we could install it like this. And I told the gallery that they should write on the front of the gallery Commerzbank, because Commerzbank, which is commercial bank, is where Kurt Schwitters found the word Merz, Commerzbank. And so now there's another bank in Paradeplatz. We did lectures and conferences with other specialists. We have a global mediation program here in Goiânia in Brazil with this tent, kind of colonizing Dada all over the world. But it's not so much about telling the people about Dada, it's actually much more about basically finding new friends or discovering new artists, or also to see what happened 100 years ago in Brazil, for example, where you had this art movement, anthropophagia, which means anthropo is human being and phagia is eat, cannibalism, yeah. With the idea that to become one kind of artist, you have to eat him. Here we're also working with the Academy of Arts, the University of Arts in Zurich. This is a project we did in London where we, this is one of the Yes Men, Jean, where these students then infiltrated a wealth forum, basically a place where millionaires consult billionaires. And they had stories of being, these two were some Russian brothers who had inherited a lot of money in shoe boxes, and their father died because somebody broke into the flat and he slipped in the bathtub while he was eating a chocolate cake or whatever. And with these stories, they went to this forum, or also in Zurich to a bank, and said, "Yeah, what shall we do with this money?" And then and they told this story, and he has a very, since then he has a trauma when it's about sweets because of the chocolate cake or something, so he was always feeling sick. And then they asked, so where is his money? And they said, yeah, it's in shoe boxes in Russia somewhere. And then the banker says, and is it legal? And they said, yeah, we don't know. And then he said, yeah, you know, if it's not legal, we can make it legal. So that's Swiss banking today. We collaborate with the university in Zurich, also with the Polytechnical School. And for the Jubilee now, we did a stage out of copper. That was Una Seemann's idea. She's the daughter of Harald Seemann. And because Harald Seemann had this one-man show, or the one-man theater, the exhibition was basically, one could say, a performative exhibition on this copper stage. We invited contemporary international artists to then show or perform their obsession, and because copper is a good conductor, to kind of reheat Cabaret Voltaire. So we had Thomas Hirschhorn there, who wanted, or still wants, to establish a critical corpus. We had here Carlos Morales together with Philippe Eustachian, who basically played the stage with microphones hammering onto the stage, creating crazy sounds and a big bass. And they made a performance, or we made a performance, you can see me here as well, on Antonin Artaud. So he was reciting texts by Artaud. Or we had Gianni Motti, an Italian artist, who said he would like to do a telepathic performance. So the idea was that we all had to put on these strange aluminium helmets, because that would protect us from radiation, and then we could concentrate better. And he wanted us to telepathically change all organizations and governments that are disturbing us. So we sat there for 3/4 of an hour, everybody concentrating on trying to change it, and I don't know. In Switzerland it's better now, maybe we didn't reach the whole world. Letko Solakov came and made a presentation over here because in Bulgarian, Dada also means yes. He wrote a small quote on that. We had Shana Lutker there, an artist from Los Angeles who made basically a reenactment of the last Dada event, which was a theater play by Tristan Tzara. And at that point, Tristan Tzara had been in a huge fight already with André Breton. Picabia had left because he was afraid that he would be politically in problems when he would do what Tzara is doing. So at this point, there was this fight, and there was Pierre-Henri Masson on the stage saying that, what was it? Jarry dead in the field of honors, and other artists dead in the field of honors. He said Picasso dead in the field of honors, and then Breton came on stage and said, take that back, because Breton had been writing, how do you say, a small text for Picasso to sell Picasso's painting to a collector. And then he said, no, I won't take it back. And then Breton, with his walking stick, broke Pierre-Henri Masson's arm. And that's maybe the end of Dada. And then soon after, Tristan Tzara said it was him, and he betrayed Breton to the police. And that was maybe the beginning of surrealism. We also had Pilar Albarracin, a Spanish artist. She made tortilla española. So basically, yeah, doing a tortilla, but instead of using tomatoes or paprika, she used her dress. And then in a kind of anthropophagic way, we ate the tortilla afterwards. Also, Lily Renaud-Devar came from France with her students. They made some kind of very strange, I could say, adolescent, teenage performance with a lot of lubricants and on the stage kind of slipping around. We also had a former member of Grupo Empresa from Brazil, Rafael Abdallah, who came with some other performance friends from Greece. And they did a durational performance for almost for 5 days, 8 hours a day, where you get into a kind of ecstatic stage and play around with each other and create different kinds of situations. And we ended our celebrations by Cabaret Voltaire with a fantastic event where we have a witness here tonight. Michael was there. Because, as Hannah mentioned, Zurich, or Cabaret Voltaire, is the embassy of the kingdoms of Elgaland, Vargaland. And all borders are territory of kingdoms of Elgaland, Vargaland. And because in Switzerland we have a lot of borders, we have 26 states, we have like 2,500 community borders, we have mountains as borders, valleys as borders. The biggest architectural achievements are things that cross borders, that's tunnels, bridges, paths, streets, serpentine streets, and so on. So we said, together with my two kings over here, on the 14th of May, we then annexed Switzerland as a border. So now all of Switzerland, maybe Switzerland is the inner border of Europe, kind of as the British newspapers would say, the black heart of Europe. So now it's not Switzerland anymore, it's Elgaland, Vargaland. It has become much more pleasant. We still have to change the flags and stuff, but yeah. So over here, we were in the main station of Zurich. There was, I think, about 2,000 people over there this was in the context of a festival which was called Zurich Dances. So you had 2,000 people dancing salsa. And then we came, and we said, okay, now we have to annex Switzerland. And I had a speech prepared, and I had Dave Phillips here and Leif Elgren, who stood on my sides, and then I read this speech, which was basically saying what I just said before. And after the speech, Karl Michael von Hausloff, King Michael, started to playing very abstract noise music, where you could hear a little bit of the national anthem of Elgaland, Vargaland, and then they started to dance like zombies on the stage. So first, the whole audience was kind of, what are they doing? What is kind of music? But then, with the time being, they joined in, and so finally we had the whole stage or dancing platform full of zombies. So they basically tried to dance the border. And after this, Cabaret Voltaire then became a guild house, Voltaire. This was Manifesta 11, which is a contemporary art biennial that's in a different European city every 2 years. They took over Cabaret Voltaire and made the Guild of the Artists, because in Zurich, as I noted before, with the guild house, to the balance, you have with 26 guilds, and they wanted to create a guild of artists, and to become a member of the Guild of the Artists, you had to perform in the guild house. So here, this is in the opening night where Manifesta still had a little bit of money to pay some artists. This is Ulay performing, the former partner of Marina Abramovic, or then also Gelitin, who tried to create the Laocoon statue, this statue that Pope Julius II put into the Garden Belvedere, by using a lot of styrofoam and plaster, and basically they mixed the plaster with beer and their own urine or piss. So it was smelling very strongly, but that's what Austrians do, as you might know. So in this sense, we are now trying to think about how Cabaret Voltaire could be a Gesamtkunstwerk. This is basically a chart which you have now also in Cabaret Voltaire to also use it more as a kind of, one could say, thought or vision, space of a vision, and we hope that with this we might create what the Dadaists already tried to do, that is neue Kunst, new art. And I like to use this symbol you may have noticed of this arrow kind of starting today or in postmodern swamp, getting accelerated in avant-garde to then create something new. So we don't know yet what it is, but we know that it has to be something that has attitude and style, or as we would say in German, which combines both, also posture, is Haltung. And Barton Brock once said, man muss angesichts dieser haltlosen Zeit Haltung annehmen. We have to have an attitude, because our time today doesn't have any attitude. That was it. Thank you very much for listening.
Just a very small question having to do with your final slide here, and could you say something about the relationship of the military garb to the gun and maybe some camouflage she's wearing, I'm not sure, in relationship to the principle of Haltung that you're invoking here?
You mean about this Peshmerga fighter over here? Why I'm showing this?
Yeah.
I think it's again connected to this idea of what I was trying to talk about in the sense of female or feminine. So this is female fighters of Peshmerga that are fighting ISIS in Syria, and they're not just fighting, but they also have these camps in the mountains where they have philosophical training, where they talk a lot about equality it's the religion of Alevites and so on. So for me, it's a good role model in a way to not just philosophically or theoretically think about things, but also to take action. And I think for me, it's if these women are fighting ISIS, which is a very one could say totally masculine principle with raping women and so on, and using one finger as a symbol. I think one could even say it's almost this kind of fight between female and masculine.
So this is in Rojava, is
Pardon?
this is in Rojava in Syria.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just try a real quick follow-up, and that is, the other question I was wondering about is, and I'm sorry I came in late, so if I missed it, of course, please explain, but did you say anything about the relationship between the Cabaret Voltaire and the Swiss state, and the role that it plays, the degree to which it functions as a kind of state institution?
Mm-hmm.
And then thinking about Rojava as a kind of independent state that is sort of, refusing the category of the state. Is there a kind of connection that you're trying to establish between Cabaret Voltaire and...
No, I didn't say anything about that, so you didn't come too late. Cabaret Voltaire in Zurich is, at the moment, the building belongs to an insurance company and the city is paying the rent. And we've been trying to convince the city to give us a little bit more money than just the rent, because with the rent alone you can't do anything. And they have been very stubborn over the last 12 years. And it's even now that with the Jubilee, of course, the city then starts promoting itself as, we are the birthplace of Dada. The mayor is very proud that we have this place of nonsense over there to create artistic freedom. Zurich Tourism is using Dada as a good promotion tool to connect with New York, for example. We had a festival there, or with London. So I would say the city and Zurich and Zurich Tourism, they realized that Dada, as I said, is a good brand and marketing tool for Zurich. So it makes Zurich a little bit more exciting instead of just being a grey banking financial place. And I think that's what I try to say with the difference between Dada and Dada. So in a way, we had a lot of Dada this year. It's the Opera House did Dada, etc. So it had like a overkill of Dada. And I think the nicest thing that is to happen is that one would use Dada maybe as a kind of, how would you say, like the Eiffel Tower for Paris. Like you would immediately associate Dada with Zurich. So that would kind of corrupt this whole, the whole seriousness of Swiss banking or of Swiss neutrality would be spoiled, because nobody would take them serious anymore, because they're just a little bit Dada. So in that sense, I'm trying to promote Dada more in Zurich, that Zurich becomes Dada as kind of as a label. But it's maybe not this I would say free space that we have. It's like we have economical and political constraints.
Since I'm still holding this, I'll just ask one more quick question. In your chart where you laid out all the different sort of places where Dada exists around the world and so on, mm-hmm. I didn't notice, but did you include Beirut as one of them? And I'm just thinking of Beirut because when you speak about banking centers, of course, Beirut is a great banking center too. And then you think about artists like Walid Rad, who function in a very, you could say they're working in a very Dadaistic way, in the way in which they destabilize. He and other artists destabilize meaning as part of the central kind of aesthetic tenets of it.
Which place did you say?
Beirut. In Lebanon, yeah. And then the artist Walid Rad was the kind of the leading figure there. Yeah. Anyway, it was just a connection to the, thinking about two different banking cities and the kind of art that gets produced in those two different banking cities was the question.
I'll be in Beirut in 2 weeks, so I can maybe you can tell me a little bit more.
Sorry, it's kind of a non-question. It's not well-formed, but I was just at a conference where there was a lot of conversation about vegetarianism, Rudolf Steiner, and the kind of rise of a sort of culture of the soil in Germany in the period immediately before World War II. And I'm so often struck when I look at Dadaism with this issue that you brought up yourself about how an immersive experience can become an authoritarian experience. And in my opening comments, I tried to sort of just make a small mention of the idea that it is the variety of experiences, right? That immersion isn't one thing. A Gesamtkunstwerk isn't experienced the same way by everyone. That I think allows us to maybe look at Dadaism as an experimental practice that cuts all these different ways, and not always in ways that take us in the direction of freedom, right? Of things we want, right? Like it wasn't Emmy Hennings, it was the other dancer.
Sophie Teuber.
Sophie Teuber. No, the woman, the one who danced. I don't have the name here. I wrote it down. But she did a lot of work, on the wrong side of National Socialism with their dance. So, I mean, Dada is most beautiful not only because it takes us where we want to be in directions of freedom, but because it models for the complexity of human experience, I think.
Yeah, because it's never fixed. Yeah. It's never fixed.
How many people does the Cabaret Voltaire employ currently?
Employ. What?
Is it just you there?
No, it's no. How many are we? 7. Like who have fixed employment, and then we have a couple of people working at the bar and in the shop who get paid by the hour.
It's Mary Whitman, the woman
Yeah.
whose name I couldn't remember.
Are these models and diagrams part of the last year's sort of anniversary, or this?
No, they're new.
They're
newer.
Brand newer. You just made them.
For tonight.
Thank you.
So
Did
that's
you create them?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So huh? No, it's InDesign. But like this one, this is a wallpaper which we have now on a wall in Cabaret Voltaire. And so it's like here, I think only Michael has been there, no? So here you would go through to the bar. This here is the technique. So you can see that here there's nothing because there's a door over here and here's a passway. And this one, for example, is a poster which we have also hanging up. So we have like a different, and this one as well.
Have you ever seen Astrid Schmidt-Borchardt's book, Learning Machines? You might enjoy them because she talks about George Maciunis's charts in terms of knowledge construction, and it's auf Deutsch.
Auf Deutsch.